Hello and welcome to Behind the Data with CloverDX. I'm your host, Matthew Stibbe, and today I am with David Green, who is CTO at IWSR. Now, some of you may know from previous episodes, I'm a bit of a wine geek, and I used to have a little wine importing business. And I did my diploma in wine at the WSET. And when we were studying the industry, we had quite a lot of IWSR data coming through in our lectures and courses. And so it's a double pleasure to have you on the show today. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Matthew. Great to be here. Looking forward to it.
So before we dive into your world and IWSR a little bit, I'd love to start with something a little bit more immediate. And are there any emerging trends or themes that you're particularly interested in at the moment? What's going on in your world?
I think the thing that's exciting for me at the minute is that it finally feels like we're moving on from years of hype on kind of dashboards and AI. AI is everywhere at the minute. I mean, God, I'm very excited about AI, but I think the exciting thing for me is that we're moving past that now. We're looking more at the kind of the more mundane, unglamorous work that's necessary. How do you clean your data? How do you integrate data? How do you ingest it? Doing all of the kind of the glue work that needs to be done, and now we're focusing on that much more. The bottleneck has always been messy and inconsistent, and kind of human data and kind of all of that messy human stuff, and actually turning that into something useful and reliable has always been the real challenge. And I think we're starting to focus more on that now and getting less excited by all the new shiny gadgets.
I think AI does the large language models do a pretty good job of appearing and potentially are intelligent, but they're you keep stumbling across the limitations as well, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, these tools are amazing. I'm a huge fan. I'm very excited about what they can offer, but I think you quite quickly realize where the limitations are. I mean, they're good for some things and they're incredibly powerful, but as soon as you start getting into dealing with human data sets, so for example, we tried throwing some messy Excel sheets at a large language model. What can you work with this? And it does a halfway okay job, and then you look at it, it's like, no, it's just missed, because it's missed all of this other, because there's some commentary and there's some highlighting and there's some weird notes. How are AI supposed to pick out all of these details? It's hard for humans to understand how data is structured, never mind a machine.
So there's still a role and a need. I'm an AI enthusiast too. I describe myself as a people first AI pragmatist, right? But I don't think it's going to instantly replace everybody and everything. And I think there's still a role for human intuition and judgment and experience, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, IWSR as a business is based on that human intuition and the value of that. I mean, in my time here, it's been so key to understand that, with all of the tooling and all the automation that we can offer, actually it's our human experts that are the real value that we as a business offer to our clients. And the more we can enable them to provide that expertise is absolutely key, because we don't want to automate that out. As a business, our customers rely on us for that human judgment, that human expertise, the decades of history that we have. And you can't automate that away. No LLM can get away from can replace that deep market judgment that our researchers have.
Yeah, and inherently, someone who's got 20 years in the industry and who knows kind of the ins and outs and has seen the patterns, that information isn't available in a form that an LLM can ingest. It's I mean, in a sense, it's your proprietary knowledge and know-how and expertise, and it's been captured in the training models and things.
Yeah, exactly. And our researchers, they research in markets, so they're going around interviewing people, talking to people. We talk to thousands of people every year, and that it's the stuff you read between the lines, right? The stuff that people might not want to write down, might not like to write down, or isn't written down anywhere. It's that triangulation, that human ability to take that information that is hard to acquire, but that people are willingly tell you. When you sit down, have a beer with them, sit down and interview them. That information is invaluable for our researchers to really understand what's actually happening. And I think, until there's robots out in the world doing that and having the same kind of conversations over a glass of beer, I think we're fine.
I hope so, because I enjoy talking to people, right? The great thing about talking to people is talking to people. So tell me about IWSR. What is it that you actually do? Where does the data and knowledge come in?
So IWSR, we're a market data research company. So we research 160 markets across the world, and we figure out at a brand line level how much alcohol is sold year by year, and we sell that data back primarily to the global drinks industry, who, it still amazes me, don't necessarily know kind of where their product ends up. It's a complex, globalized supply chain. Alcohol's regulated all over the world, so there's all sorts of quirks and consequences from that. So we have a team of expert researchers who travel the world every year, working out at a detailed level exactly how much alcohol, brand by brand, has been sold in all these markets, and we tabulate that. So obviously some of this is, there's a huge data ingestion process there. Some of the data comes through, messy handwritten notes, heard verbally. Some of it's stuff read through press, but a lot of it inevitably comes through Excel files. So a big part of what we end up doing is taking a lot of that data and being able to triangulate it and then incorporate that into all of the other sources that we've heard.
So you're bringing data in from manufacturers?
From both the producers and distributors. So we work across the supply chain to try and understand, this many cases of Johnny Walker left the factory, this many went through this distributor, this guy over here says he saw some, so we're trying to understand exactly the flow. So the data point we're trying to get to is how much went into retail, because it's especially, so the company started with wine and spirits. And the thing with wine and spirits is that they can be held in warehouses for a really long time. So you can get a stock problem where I've sold a lot from my, have left the chateau or have left on a boat somewhere, but then who holds on to it? Well, it can be anywhere in the supply chain. So what we're trying to understand is what's actually going into retail, what's being sold.
So by the time it's reached retail, effectively, you assume it's reaching consumers.
Exactly, yeah, because no pubs and bars, no supermarkets are going to hold on to vast volumes of inventory. The thing with retail is that they want to be shut of that inventory quite quickly, generally, rather than suppliers further up the supply chain. That it may be valuable to pay for warehousing space. It might be cheaper for me to hold on to a ton of spirits now and then sell it next year when I expect the price to be better. So that's always been our angle, is what's going into retail, really. That's the unique insight that we offer, because obviously the producers know how much they've made, but what they don't necessarily know is how much are people buying.
Or how much other people are making, or how much of other people.
Exactly, yeah, and then it's that cross-market view and consistent, and it's that 160 market-wide view that's the real unique selling point for IWSR, is that nobody else has that same consistent methodology. So you can take a massive market like the US and a tiny market like Botswana, say, and compare them exactly the same. So you're looking at like for like rather than comparing all of got. Developed markets like the UK and America have really good automated data collection, but actually you can't use that consistently. If you're looking at a different market, you can't use the same method. So that's always been our reliance on this human data collection.
So on some level, what you're doing is processing data that's coming in different formats and sources for different countries and making it comparable. Normalizing,
yeah, exactly. So a big part of the human judgment there is making sure that everything is ultimately cross-comparable, that we're in every market we're comparing like with like. So there's a huge process there around ensuring that consistency.
Okay, fascinating. And so when that data has been processed, how do you deliver that back to your clients?
So we have an online platform that our clients have access to, and so that's how they can deliver. They can get access to the raw numbers, and we also then provide written commentary on top. So providing that kind of expert qualitative judgment. There's the real art there is everybody wants the numbers, kind of the raw data. How did I do? How did my competitors do? What markets are interesting? But actually, that expert judgment, the written opinion, is often just as valuable to kind of give that color onto what the raw numbers actually mean. So yeah, so our platform delivers kind of this mixture of both qualitative and quantitative content.
So as CTO, as your sort of this data is moving through IWSR's data pipelines, what are some of the challenges that you're facing?
So the challenge really was one of time. So our research process is incredibly condensed. So we in the world of instantaneous data, we work on an annual publication cycle. So we publish data every May for the previous calendar year, which means our research process starts January 1st. People start traveling. And then our customers need that data basically as soon as we can get it. We currently publish in May, and it's a real push to get all of the traveling, the in-market interviews, to meet everybody, to collect all of the data, to clean it, to go through all of the QC checks it needs to go through to get that published in time for May. And as we started reviewing that process, one of the things we realized is that our domain experts, our researchers, were spending a frightening amount of time on what's effectively manual data entry. We did a screen recording with one of our researchers really early on in my time here, which became legendary just because it was terrifying. I was watching a highly skilled human being copy pasting numbers from one spreadsheet into our tool one at a time. It's just this is an insane waste of your ability. Like you're an expert in the field. What you don't know about beverage alcohol in your market isn't worth knowing, and you're sitting here spending an hour of your day just copying numbers back and forth.
Yeah,
That's,
I mean,
that's
who on their deathbed really wants to look back on their life and go, I wish I'd spent more time transposing data from spreadsheets, right?
I mean, God, the job satisfaction must be awful at that point. So this for me was the real trigger that we needed to do something, and the business needed to be able to scale. The danger is, as we're trying to collect more data, get more depth into more markets, research new products, the team is having to constantly scale, and that's no good for a business if you have to keep hiring more people to scale. Really, what we needed was to bake some more scalability, and so we needed to look at more automation. So this was where we started to look at how can we take this data from Excel and how can we build an ingestion pipeline.
And so when you were planning this ingestion pipeline, this project, what did you? I mean, how many? Give me a sense of the scale of it. I mean, how many data points, how many spreadsheets, how many data sources?
I mean, we receive, I think, tens of thousands of files a year, and each one will have hundreds, thousands of data points in them. So it's a lot of data entry. The the net effect was amazing. So our research team of 20, 30 people, they each saved 8 days per year by the time we'd done this. And that's over a period of only 4 months, really. They're only really kind of collecting data for 4 months. So per individual, that's an amazing time saving.
And this is. Are you giving spreadsheet templates to your data providers, or
We do to some, obviously, because we're working with a wide range of different partners. Some of them will have big complex ERP systems, so that we just get a dump in whatever format their ERP system wants to output, and we have to deal with that. But for many of our suppliers, we send them a starter Excel. Basically, here's an output from our system, just it still runs on Excel, and then they fill that in and send it back to us. Which helps because mostly that means it's a really understandable format because we know exactly how it's structured. Brand lines are here, volumes are here, we know how everything's organized. But inevitably, because they're often human edited, then there's still mistakes and weirdnesses creep in because somebody does something strange and adds a new brand line in the wrong place, or adds volume somewhere weird, or adds a comment, this number's not true, I'll follow up by email. I mean, the range of complexity can be insane. So we try and standardize this, but we can't mandate that our partners provide data in a specific format. There's a real balance there that we have to meet our partners halfway rather than dictate exactly how they send us data, because we need the data.
well, and I think this is. We were talking about this earlier, and I mentioned Pavel Naivar at Clover, who says that if you're using Excel, you failed in some way. What are some of the problems with using Excel as a data ETL tool?
Excel's brilliant, right? But it's so pervasive and it's so powerful. But it's used in so many different ways. There's no single way of using Excel. I remember hearing something a while ago. It was a long time ago now. That it was a revelation for Microsoft when they realized that people were using Excel to keep lists. So they started adding sorting and filtering functionality because they hadn't thought that people were collecting lists in it. So of course people collect lists in Excel. What else are people using it for? But this is the trouble, right? Everybody's got their own weird way of using Excel. So if you say, send us your data in Excel, yeah, here it is. I mean, my favorite example, we received one spreadsheet and there was like 20 tabs, 10 tabs, I can't remember, loads of tabs, all with very similar looking data. And which tab has the correct data in it? Because these all look the same. Apparently the answer was the one labeled for Dave. That's not me. I don't know who Dave was.
Right, a different Dave. Yeah.
Some other guy somewhere in the chain had, and it's like, how is anybody supposed to know that was the correct thing? In the end, somebody had to go. A human had to engage another human, saying, "How do I understand this? Where's the data? It's in for Dave. Sorry, I should have said."
I've in my world, mad people sometimes send us copy for websites in Excel. They've used it as a word processor, which is like, and if you've tried writing things, you have to do shift return in cells, and it's like the worst way how they do. And my wife, who is an accountant and incredibly talented, but therefore she thinks she sees the world through an Excel lens. When we were designing the extension here, she did the interior design in Excel with each cell being like 10 centimeters. I mean, how using it as a CAD tool? Absolutely insane. So yes, it's incredibly powerful, but also completely irritating. I would ban it if I could. Back in the day when I used to do a lot of my marketing for Microsoft, that would have been heresy, but I can say it now. Okay, so
it's so powerful, isn't it? I mean, this is it. People use it because it's a really powerful, really flexible tool. So everybody uses the tool that's at hand, and if that's the one you're familiar with, then everybody uses it. But this has become our lingua franca, right? That we don't have a data interchange format. we're working with partners. Do they send us CSV files? No. Do they send it in JSON? No. Do they send us Parquet? No. It's Excel. Of course, it's Excel. And this has become the lingua franca for the whole world.
So at IWSR, you have this tidal wave of Excel files coming in, and you are ingesting them. How did you improve that?
So the big change was we started integrating CloverDX. So this really enabled us to start automating this incredibly manual, time-consuming, labor-intensive process. So by using Wrangler, this gave us a way of, instead of having kind of domain experts spending their valuable time working out how to parse an Excel file, actually we can pay relatively cheap interns to come in and work with us, because actually Wrangler is really easy to use, and it gives you a nice visual model of, here's what the Excel file looks like, just label what the columns are, and it'll do the import. And everything we're receiving is basically tabular data, but there's often headers, there'll be weird stuff off to the side that we don't care about. So actually working out, this is where the brand lines are, this is where last year's volumes are. Okay, great, sorted. We'll pull that data out, and then we can do something with it. So this was a really key first step in our process of not having humans copy-pasting values out of spreadsheets. But the real challenge for us has always been mapping. So what we receive, once you've got past all of the for Dave nonsense and the weird annotations and the weird commentary and weird structure, you start to get into the real messy mechanics of data. So we take brand line level data, which means that all of our partners send it how they think of their brand lines, not how we think of their brand lines. And obviously we have a canonical name for all of the world's drinks brands.
So Smirnoff vodka would be a brand line.
Exactly, yeah. And obviously some people would just call that Smirnoff vodka. So Absolute Vodka is called Absolute Vodka. One of the examples I bumped into recently, so there are various flavored versions of Absolute Vodka. We abbreviate flavored all across our database to FLAV dot, because it's briefer, because some of them are really quite long names. By the time we've got Absolute Raspberry flavored vodka, it's quite a long string. So we shorten it. But obviously some of our partners spell flavored, because why wouldn't they? Some of them probably just miss the word flavored, because Absolute Raspberry vodka, well, obviously it's the flavored vodka. So you have to map from all of the various strings with foreign characters that we do or don't replicate, to misspellings that we do or don't replicate. So all of this mapping process, from what third parties call brand lines to what we call them, it was really the value that we were getting out of the researchers in this process was that detailed understanding of, in this market, these two brand lines that look really similar, are they actually the same thing, or are these two completely different products? Because this happens increasingly. You'll have a product in one category, so it's increasingly now, to get slightly drinks geeky. So a lot of spirits drinks now are moving into this ready-to-drink category. So these are kind of pre-packaged drinks in a can or a bottle that's ready to drink. They often have really similar names. So knowing that, no, that's the raw spirit versus, this is the slightly similarly named but pre-packaged version, can be quite nuanced. And lots of them have strange, exotic names, because there's lots of creativity in that space at the minute. So the researchers' expertise of knowing which brand line is which, and are these two separate things that we need to separate, and we need to add something to our database, or is this something we already know about? So this was where a data manager came in. So this allowed us to build a mapping process, so we could take just the brand lines. So now we've got the data out of Excel. Let's now just go through each brand line. So this one specific brand line, this looks like, here's some candidates it might be. Does this match? Does this correlate with what we know? Is it the right category? Does the volume look like what we expect it to be? What kind of data do we have to help us triangulate? So this was the next kind of really key step in the process then of trying to focus in on just that bit of domain knowledge. What's the important bit to get at here? How do we actually map from what our partners call these brands to what we call them?
And this data manager, these sort of mappings, once you sort of built that engine to process that, you can run that against different spreadsheets and different data sources.
Yeah, I mean, we don't tend to, because our current assumption is that we can really only, so we do keep track of the mappings that we've made, but our assumption is that those mappings will probably be supplier specific. So if we've worked with one partner and they've called it this, right, well, we can only really safely guess that you will call that next year. So next year should be amazing. So this year we had to go through a fairly expensive process of mapping all of these things for the first time. But next year we'll have a really good database of these are all the things that we've had from all the various suppliers. So we could have taken a view from other suppliers, but because some of these are really fiddly and really quite fine-grained, the safest thing to do was to say, no, actually we'll keep this quite supplier-centric. It gives us a bit more work to do now, but then it means next year it'll be really robust. And there's what we don't want is to introduce errors here. If we mismap these things, you could end up with some really unfortunate errors. And
you're sort of learning how each supplier describes their thing and how that translates into fluent IWSR.
Exactly. So that's the mapping we've built up this year, and then next year we should save even more time, because then we've not got to go through mostly through this mapping process. There'll be some changes, and there'll be some renames, and and there'll be new brand lines appearing, but hopefully it should mean that work is steadily reduces every year.
How do you pick up those exceptions?
So that will be through the data manager process. And next year, as we start ingesting new data, most of it will flow through automatically, and data manager won't prompt the users to map anything. So this will be the nice thing now, is that because we have a process now where things go to Wrangler, data appears in data manager, then somebody goes into data manager and works out what needs mapping. Actually, if everything's already pre-mapped, it says there's nothing to do, move on. And if there's a handful of brand lines that need picking up, because it will recognize the ones that it's not got an exact match for, and it will then prompt us to then actually come up with a new mapping.
So this is sort of turning the whole situation on its head. Instead of somebody having to manually copy paste, and most of the time it's brainless, and sometimes there's an exception. Now the system's going to do that and only ask for the expert interpretation when there's something new or something different.
Exactly. Yeah. So it means we can keep that expertise really just focused on the differences year to year, which should be relatively minimal. We work with 20,000-30,000 brand lines. It's not going to double next year.
And what difference is that going to make to IWSR? And obviously, people are going to be happier lives doing less manual grunt work. But how does it help you as a business?
The real thing it will enable us to do now is to scale. So to basically start ingesting new data sets. So now we have a process that we know works and that we know we can apply. We'll now be able to take different data sets and work into different markets, taking on either additional data or entirely new data sets. So it will allow us to scale the business. So taking in more data, selling more product to more customers, making more value to our clients, but without having to pay more humans, because the expertise is now more concentrated. This was never an exercise in kind of reducing staff. This is about trying to free up time for our experts to be the experts that they are. So this means we can take in more data without taking up more of their time, and they're still free then to provide their expert insight and analysis that LLMs can't. That color on top of the raw data to say, actually, what's really going on here is this long-term trend is reversing because of blah blah blah, and that insight is invaluable. So we're really trying to free them up to do that, but work on ever bigger data sets.
Free the humans. I love that. We're almost out of time, but I'd love to ask you just one last question. From that process, deploying that data ingestion, what did you learn? What would you have done differently, knowing what you know now?
Slightly difficult question. I think mainly we just should have started earlier. I think we've as a business, we've spent too long letting humans do work that machines could have done. So I think in many ways it's a shame we didn't start this early, but I'm glad we did do it. And the end result has been excellent. I mean, the feedback from researchers has been amazing. That we've saved them time. They can focus on doing the part of the job that they enjoy, going out talking to people, being the experts in their field, not just data entry. So it's just a shame to me that we didn't start this earlier.
This is, I think, a common regret everywhere. It's back when I was a pilot, we used to say there are three useless things: airspace above you, runway behind you, and fuel on the ground. And time that you could have spent doing something that you didn't is in that sort of category. Well, so on that nostalgic revelation, I think that brings this episode to a close. David, thank you so much for sharing your experiences. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you, Matthew. Pleasure.
And if you're listening to this or watching this and you'd like more practical data insights, or you'd like to learn more about CloverDX, please visit cloverdx.com/behind the data. Thank you for listening.